You're adopted anyway." That's what my cousin Lena said across the dinner table. Her voice was loud enough for the entire family to hear, but low enough to sound like a secret she wanted everyone to enjoy. The table went silent for half a second. Then came the laughter. First my Aunt Karen, then Dad, then Lena again, full-blown cackling like she'd just dropped the best punchline of the year. I looked at my mom. She didn't flinch. She didn't correct her. She didn't deny it. She just took another sip of her wine and looked away. That was the moment it clicked. Not just the insult, but the years behind it. The weird silences. The lack of baby photos. The way they always said, "You're lucky we kept you." I picked up my glass, stood up, and raised it. To my scholarship, to jealousy disguised as jokes, and to the lies that hold this family together. I clinked the glass against my own plate, loud and clear, and walked out. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just walked out of that house like I was never meant to be part of it in the first place. 6 months later, the truth came out. The boy they thought was their son wasn't even related to them. But me? I was. My name is Nira Alden, and for most of my life I felt like a guest in my own home. Not because anyone said it outright, but because of the silence between the words, the glances that lingered too long, and the feeling that no matter how hard I tried, I was never really one of them. I grew up in a town called Willow Creek, a picture-perfect suburb about an hour north of Albany. It was the kind of place where lawns stayed trimmed, people waved from their porches, and families took holiday photos in matching sweaters whether they liked each other or not. From the outside, our house looked like any other. White shutters, two-story, the American dream. Inside, it was cold in ways the thermostat couldn't fix. My mom, Gloria, was a master of perfection. Her hair always in place, her lipstick a perfect matte mauve. She worked as a real estate broker and treated every conversation like a transaction. Everything she said felt filtered, measured, managed. When I brought home A's, she nodded. When I won debate tournaments, she reminded me to smile more. Her love wasn't cruel, it just felt like something you had to earn over and over. My dad, Martin, wasn't unkind. He was just absent. Even when he was in the room, his work at the insurance office took up most of his energy, and whatever was left he used up watching sports or scrolling on his phone. I don't remember ever having a real conversation with him growing up. I knew he liked turkey sandwiches and hated traffic, but I didn't know if he loved me. Not really. Then there was Lena, my cousin, my rival, my shadow. Lena was the daughter of my mom's older sister, Karen, and somehow she was in our house more than she was in her own. Aunt Karen was bossy, loud, and obsessed with control. She raised Lena to believe she was royalty, and in our family, she was. Lena was everything I wasn't. Blonde, athletic, loud, confident. Teachers loved her, boys adored her, and the family worshipped her. When I won something, she won louder. When I spoke up, she spoke over me. I didn't hate her. I just couldn't breathe around her. Even when I did well, it felt like she had already done better. When I was named valedictorian, she joked that it was only because she transferred schools. When I got accepted into a national STEM program, she said, "They probably needed more diversity." Everyone laughed. At first I thought I was being sensitive. Maybe I was just imagining the favoritism, the way Aunt Karen always introduced Lena as our star, and me as the bookish one. But as I got older, I noticed more. The family vacations I wasn't invited to. The way Aunt Karen always brought Lena expensive gifts while handing me books from garage sales. The way even Grandpa Walter, the only person who seemed to care, would look at me with a kind of guilt in his eyes. I remember once, when I was around 10, I asked Mom why I didn't look like anyone else in the family. She laughed and said, "Not all apples grow on the same tree, sweetie." Then she changed the subject. That answer stuck with me. So did the questions it didn't answer. Still, I tried. I worked hard. I stayed out of trouble. I joined science club, ran track, tutored after school. Not because anyone asked me to, but because I thought maybe, just maybe, if I became exceptional enough, they'd see me. Not as the quiet one or the different one, but as theirs. Senior year was when everything shifted. I had just won a full scholarship to a university out of state, a rare, prestigious award that only 10 students in the country received. It was the first time in my life I felt like I had done something they couldn't ignore. Mom barely reacted. Dad said, "That's great, kid." Lena called it cute. Aunt Karen changed the topic to Lena's cheerleading competition. They were always ready to move on when it came to me. Except for Grandpa Walter. He took my hand the day I got the scholarship letter and said, "You know, Nira, there's something in your eyes, something that reminds me of someone I once knew." He looked like he was going to say more. Then he didn't. I thought it was just a compliment. But later, I would realize it was something else. Something deeper. A warning, maybe. Or a clue. At the time, I didn't question it. I was used to things left unsaid. That was how our family worked. Always smiling, always pretending, always hiding. But that night at the dinner table, when Lena hurled that sentence at me like a knife, and everyone laughed while Mom looked away, that was when I stopped pretending. That was the moment I knew I wasn't crazy. Something was wrong, and I was going to find out exactly what it was. It was supposed to be a celebration. The dining room was spotless, candles glowed on the table, and the good china, usually saved for holidays, was laid out like something important was about to happen. It was my graduation dinner. Not Lena's, not a holiday, mine. I had just been named valedictorian, and I was one of 10 students in the country to win the Horizon Science Scholarship, which came with a full ride, research mentorship, and automatic placement in a summer internship program at a major tech firm. But even with all that, I could feel it as I walked in. The tension, the tight smiles, the kind of politeness people use when they're waiting for someone to fail. Lena was already seated, wearing a tight dress like she was going to a party, scrolling through her phone. Aunt Karen was pouring wine and gossiping loudly about one of Lena's teachers. My dad looked tired. My mom looked perfect. The same as always. I smiled, said thank you to everyone for coming, and sat down. Dinner started like it always did, with Lena dominating the conversation. She talked about a beach trip her friend's parents were taking her on, how her boyfriend might propose one day, how hard it was being popular and misunderstood. Aunt Karen fed every comment with fake surprise and overdone praise. When I tried to chime in, I was either interrupted or ignored, until Grandpa Walter raised his glass. "To Nira," he said, his voice steady. "She's going to make this family proud." That was the moment the room shifted. The silence that followed wasn't warm, it was sharp. Then Lena leaned forward, tilted her head, and smiled. "She's not really part of the family, Grandpa," she said, her tone sickly sweet. "She's adopted anyway." The words dropped like a rock in water. No one gasped. No one said, "That's not true." No one corrected her. Instead, the table laughed, the kind of laugh people give when they're uncomfortable but entertained. I turned to my mother. Her eyes met mine for a second, then slid away. She lifted her wine glass and took a sip. That was it. I felt something in me pull tight, like a string about to snap. I stood up, slowly. I could feel the heat rise in my face, not from embarrassment, but from years of swallowed words and small humiliations. I lifted my glass. "To my scholarship," I said, "to jealousy hidden behind jokes, to families built on silence." I clinked the glass against my plate. The sound rang louder than the laughter had, and then I walked out. I left my own celebration. No one followed me. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it all. My mind ran through everything. The missing baby pictures, the way I looked nothing like either of my parents, the conversations that stopped when I walked into a room, the way Mom always introduced me as our miracle, but never explained what that meant. I remembered a time in 4th grade when I had to bring in a baby photo for a school project. I asked Mom for one, and she gave me a studio photo of a toddler that didn't look like me. I pointed that out, and she snapped, "It's what we have." That was the end of that conversation. I started asking myself questions I hadn't dared ask before. Was Lena telling the truth? If I was adopted, why had no one ever told me? Was that why they treated me like I didn't belong? Was that why Mom always seemed so distant? Why Dad never said much? Why Aunt Karen talked about Lena like she was the only child worth celebrating? And if it was true, then who were my real parents? By the next morning, I had already made up my mind. I was going to find out. Not for them. Not even for closure. For me. I deserved to know the truth, and I wasn't going to stop until I had it. The morning after the dinner, I didn't cry. I didn't even feel angry anymore. What I felt was focused. I had spent years trying to earn my place in a family that didn't see me. That ended the night Lena opened her mouth and Mom said nothing. I wasn't just going to accept what I'd heard, I was going to prove it. First, I needed information. I started small. I went into the attic while my parents were out shopping. There were boxes of Christmas ornaments, school trophies, tax documents, typical storage clutter. I found one box labeled Nira's Childhood. Inside were coloring books, a baby blanket, my kindergarten certificate. But no ultrasound photos, no birth certificate, no hospital bracelet, no framed baby pictures like the ones Lena's mom kept displayed all over their house. Not even one of me in my mother's arms as a newborn. That told me something. Not everything, but enough. So I kept digging. I asked my mom where I was born. She said St. Catherine's. When I asked what city it was in, she paused and said, "Just outside of Syracuse." Her answer felt rehearsed, like something memorized. I went online. St. Catherine's didn't exist in or near Syracuse. I searched further. No hospital by that name existed in the entire state. That was when I knew. They were hiding something, and it wasn't just awkward family history, it was identity. Mine. I ordered a DNA kit. No ceremony, no dramatic confrontation. Just a click and a shipping address. When the kit arrived 3 days later, I followed the instructions, sealed the swab, and sent it back. I checked the online tracker obsessively until it showed the sample had been received. While I waited, I started thinking about what I might find. I created an account on the DNA testing site and checked the database for public matches. There weren't many at first. Distant cousins, names I didn't recognize. Nothing that could confirm or deny anything. But then I had an idea. Lena was careless with her things. She left her toothbrush in our downstairs bathroom every time she slept over. I wasn't proud of what I did, but I wasn't ashamed either. I took it. Sent in a second test under a fake name, just to compare. Just to see if we shared anything at all. 2 weeks passed. The day the results came in, I locked myself in my room, sat on my bed, and stared at the screen. Lena and I had no genetic relation. None. Not cousins, not distant relatives. Nothing. I stared at the screen and felt the kind of silence that isn't empty. It's heavy, like the air before a storm. It was one thing to suspect. It was another to see it in black and white. But that wasn't all. There was another match in the database. A close one. Closer than Lena had ever been. A direct match. Grandparent level. Walter Alden, Grandpa, my grandfather, which meant someone in that generation was a direct parent. There were only 2 options, Karen or Gloria. One couldn't stand me. The other pretended to love me. I ran the numbers. The DNA percentage was undeniable. Gloria was my biological mother, the woman who raised me, the woman who let her niece humiliate me, the woman who stayed quiet while I questioned if I even belonged in her life. I sat on my bed for what felt like hours. Then I got up, walked downstairs, and stood in the kitchen doorway. My mom was slicing fruit like nothing had happened, like she hadn't been lying to me my entire life. I told her everything I had found. She didn't look surprised. She set the knife down and said, "It was a complicated time." I asked her why she didn't tell me. She said, "You weren't supposed to know. It was easier for everyone that way." I wasn't sure who everyone included, but it definitely wasn't me. She told me that when she got pregnant with me, she was young, single, and terrified of what it would do to her reputation. Her sister Karen had recently had a miscarriage. They made a deal. Karen would raise me and my mom would stay close, always in the background. "But you didn't stay in the background," I said. "You raised me." She shrugged. "Karen wasn't cut out for it. You were dropped back into my lap and by then I couldn't undo it." I looked at her and realized I had been trying for years to make her proud of me, but she had never wanted me in the first place. That was the turning point, the moment I stopped needing her love and started demanding the truth. I didn't tell anyone what my mother said, not right away. I needed time to decide what to do with the truth. I needed to make sure I wasn't reacting out of rage or revenge. I wanted to be intentional, not impulsive. But the more I sat with it, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about me anymore. They had let me live as an outsider in my own bloodline while pretending everything was fine. So I waited for the right moment to set the truth on the table. That moment came at Thanksgiving. The entire family gathered at our house that year. Aunt Karen brought her usual over-the-top desserts. Lena wore a sweater that probably cost more than my whole outfit. Everyone was in a fake good mood, acting like we were the perfect picture of a happy family. I helped set the table. I smiled when I had to. I kept my voice light. After dinner, while the adults were drinking coffee and eating pie, I stood up. "I want to share something," I said. My voice didn't shake. I had rehearsed this moment every night in my head. Something important. Everyone turned to me. Some smiled, expecting a cute announcement about college or a new internship. I pulled out an envelope and opened it. "These are my DNA results," I said, "and a few others I had tested. I needed answers because someone in this family told me I was adopted." Aunt Karen's fork froze mid-air. Lena rolled her eyes and muttered, "You're really still on that?" I ignored her. I didn't just test myself. I tested a relative. Lena and I share no DNA. None. So we're not cousins. Now I had their attention. I turned to Grandpa Walter. "But you and I, we're a strong match. That makes one of your children my biological parent." The room fell into a silence so thick it felt like it pressed against my skin. "Only one person matched as my biological mother," I said, looking directly at Gloria. "And it was you." Her face didn't move. Not a twitch. Just a stillness that said more than words ever could. "She's lying," Aunt Karen snapped. "This is ridiculous." "No, she's not," Gloria said. Everyone looked at her, stunned. "She's not lying. She's mine." It felt like the floor dropped beneath the entire room. "She's your what?" Karen said, standing up so fast her chair tipped backward. "My daughter," Gloria said, her voice low but clear. "I got pregnant young. I wasn't married. Karen had just lost a child. We agreed she'd raise Nira and I would stay close, but it didn't last. I ended up taking her back when Karen couldn't handle it, but we never told Nira the truth." Aunt Karen looked like she had been slapped. "You don't get to rewrite history. You gave her to me. I raised her." "You raised her like a burden," I said. "You treated me like I was never enough, like I was temporary." "You should be grateful," Karen snapped. "You had a roof over your head, food on your plate. That's more than some kids get." "I wasn't looking for charity," I said. "I was looking for family." Lena stayed quiet for once. Her smug expression was gone. She looked like she didn't know where to look. I turned back to my mother. "You let me grow up thinking I was the outsider. You let them make me feel small. Why?" "I thought it would be easier," Gloria said. "For you, for everyone." "It was easier for you," I replied, "not for me." I folded the papers and placed them in the middle of the table. "You all made your choices. Now I've made mine." Then I walked out of the room. No one followed. For the first time, I wasn't leaving to make a point. I was leaving because I finally understood I didn't need their permission, their approval, or their lies. I had the truth. And it changed everything. The girl who stood at that table wasn't invisible anymore. She was undeniable. After Thanksgiving, I didn't speak to my mother for a while. She didn't call. I didn't reach out either. For years, I had been the one trying to keep the peace, trying to hold things together. This time, I let silence do the work. It was the first time in my life that I chose distance not out of fear or rejection, but as an act of self-respect. People in town started talking. Families like ours aren't supposed to have public breakdowns. The Aldens were known for being polished, organized, respectable. I had shattered that image in a single evening, but I didn't care. For the first time, I wasn't pretending. I focused on school. I started my freshman year with clarity. I was no longer trying to earn anyone's love. I poured myself into research, made new friends, and started volunteering with a nonprofit that worked with teens who had grown up in foster care or had been adopted without answers. I didn't tell them everything about my past, but when I spoke to those girls, I saw the same look in their eyes that used to be in mine, like they were trying to understand where they belonged in a story that was never fully told to them. I kept writing letters to Grandpa Walter. Even though he wasn't perfect, he had tried in his own quiet way to reach me. He passed away that spring. In his will, he left me an old journal, a collection of family records, and a note that said, "You were always mine. You always will be." It was the first time I cried in months. The journal told me more than anyone in the family ever had. It explained how Gloria had wanted to leave town when she found out she was pregnant but had no support. How Karen offered to help, but only on the condition that the child never be publicly linked to Gloria. How Gloria gave in because she was afraid of what people would say. It didn't make everything right, but it helped me understand that I was never the mistake. I was just the secret. Eventually, my mother called. She didn't apologize in the way I had once wished she would, not with flowers, not with tears, just a quiet voice asking if we could talk. We met at a diner halfway between campus and home. She looked older, or maybe I just saw her clearly for the first time. "I know you probably hate me," she said. "I don't," I answered, "but I don't trust you either." She nodded. "That's fair." We talked for an hour. She told me she never expected the secret to last this long, that she had always planned to tell me but never found the right moment. I told her the right moment would have been any time before my cousin humiliated me in front of the whole family. We didn't hug at the end of that meeting, but we shook hands like two people starting over, not as mother and daughter, just as two women trying to be honest for once. I don't know what our relationship will become. I'm not sure we'll ever be close, but I'm not chasing that anymore. I've stopped begging people to choose me. What I've learned is that the truth isn't always kind, but it is freeing. I thought uncovering it would tear me apart. It didn't. It rebuilt me. People say blood is thicker than water. I used to believe that. Now I believe this instead. Loyalty is earned, family is chosen, and identity is something you fight for. I still go by Nira Alden, but the meaning of that name has changed. It no longer represents the family I was born into or the silence I was raised in. It represents the version of me that stood up, told the truth, and walked away with her head high. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own story, let me tell you this. Your worth isn't up for debate. You don't owe anyone your silence. And you don't have to carry shame that was never yours to begin with. You are not the problem. You are the truth, and no one gets to bury that forever. That was my story. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't pretty, but it was mine. And finally, it's been told. If you've ever felt like you didn't belong, if you've ever been silenced in a room full of people who were supposed to protect you, if you've ever had to fight just to understand who you are, then you're not alone. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And sometimes the truth is the only thing worth holding on to. If this story hit something in you, like the video so others can find it too, share it with someone who might need to hear it. Comment below. Tell me your story or just let me know you're out there. I read every single one. And if you want more true stories that don't hold back, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next. Thanks for watching. And never forget, what they try to bury can still rise.